Welcome to the Gray Art Gallery's look-back tour of New York Cool, painting and sculpture from the NYU Art Collection, which was on view in 2008 from April 22nd to July 16th. My name is Saga Beus. I'm a recent graduate of NYU's Museum Studies program and an intern here at the Gray. On the screen, you see the colorful posters for the exhibition in the Gray's display windows on Washington Square East, facing Washington Square Park. Note the sober Doric columns on the ground floor of NYU's Silver Center building, which houses the Gray and which was constructed in 1892. Now let's step inside the gallery's lobby. Here you see the exhibition's entry wall and main text panel. If you'd like to read the text, visit the Gray's website. New York Cool examines art in downtown New York City during the later 1950s and early 60s, which is often characterized as a mere intermediary period between abstract expressionism and later movements such as pop art and minimalism. But as Pepe Carmel, NYU professor of art history and the curator of New York Cool explains, most of the key innovations of the postmodern era actually emerged in this in-between period. Thus, the more than 80 artworks in New York Cool reflect an extremely fertile and innovative period of artistic production, setting the stage for the myriad new movements that appeared in the wake of abstract expressionism. Let's begin with an untitled work by Nicholas Marsicano dating from 1966, which hung opposite the exhibition's introductory text panel. After studying at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art and the Barnes Foundation, Marsicano taught painting and drawing at Cooper Union for over 40 years. Here he paints one of his favorite subjects, a female nude, evoking both the reclining odalisques of Matisse and the gestural brushwork of abstract expressionism. Marsicano's thick black lines and pink and flesh tones infuse his figure with life and movement, emphasizing its sensuality. Around the corner from Marsicano is a group of drawings by Seymour Lipton, an abstract expressionist sculptor who is also a dentist. Lipton often worked out his ideas in preparatory sketches such as these before making his sculptures. Installed across from Lipton's sketches is one of his small bronze sculptures. Entitled Argosy, it dates from 1948. In it, you can see the curved and jagged forms typical of his work dating from after World War II, which is heavily steeped in the horrors of war. The Argosy of the title is a large merchant ship, referenced here in the sculpture's profile and in the anchor-like shapes embedded in the stern. During the war, merchant ships delivered vast quantities of war materiel, supplies, equipment, and troops needed to fight battles. Though they sailed in convoys escorted by Navy destroyers, over 1,500 merchant ships were sunk through enemy action, and merchant mariners sustained among the highest number of wartime casualties of any group. Continuing around the corner and along the gallery's west wall, we see 3 of our upcoming stops on the tour. At the left is one of the Gray Art Gallery's distinctive cast-iron columns, which echo the Doric columns on the Silver Center's facade that we saw at the start of our tour. Our first stop is at the right, a set of poem paintings co-created by Frank O'Hara and Norman Bluhm. On the left is a collage by Robert Rauschenberg, and in the center is a large painting by Helen Frankenthaler. Poem Paintings is a collaborative work by artist Norman Bluhm and poet Frank O'Hara. In addition to composing poetry, O'Hara was a well-known art critic and an influential curator at New York's Museum of Modern Art. In October 1960, the 2 men were in Bluhm's studio, listening to a sonata by Prokofiev on the radio, when Bluhm picked up a brush and began painting. O'Hara added words in response. By the time they finished, they had covered 27 sheets with overlapping brushstrokes, paint drips, and text. Bluhm's gestural dripping strokes echo those in his paintings on canvas from the same period. Let's examine the central image here. Unlike Jackson Pollock's famous strip paintings, which he made on the floor, Bluhm executed his works on the wall, allowing gravity to pull the paint down in vertical streams. O'Hara inserted the words, "Meet me in the park if you love me," imparting to this image a syncopated rhythm and a hint of romance. Across the gallery on the opposite wall is an untitled collage by Robert Rauschenberg, dating from 1957. Here Rauschenberg, like Bluhm in the work we just saw, makes good use of vertically dripping paint, pairing it with vertical scribbles and collage elements that include a photograph of a horse, a Dutch group portrait, and part of a telegram, which he has partially painted over. This juxtaposition of materials exemplifies Rauschenberg's approach to art making. Taking a leaf from surrealist practice, he brings together dissimilar images and mark-making to spark our imaginations as we try to construct a rationale for the painting. Now we have arrived at the Gray's south wall, which features the monumental painting by Helen Frankenthaler that you see in the foreground, and a large black wall sculpture by Louise Nevelson, which you can just make out in the distance. Helen Frankenthaler's Seascape with Dunes, which dates from 1962, exemplifies her unique style of stained color field painting, an effect she achieved by thinning oil paint and pouring it onto raw, untreated canvas. She made this enormous work during the year she transitioned from oil to acrylic paint, which allows for more even staining and spreading. The pools of vibrant color you see here reference the landscape of Long Island, with its characteristic ocean waves and sand dunes. But with her color choices, Frankenthaler pushes this composition toward the realm of fantasy. Now we have arrived at Louise Nevelson's The Tropical Gardens of 1957. Upon receiving a case of liquor for Christmas in 1957, the artist noticed the sculptural quality of its cellular dividers. She soon began stacking and painting boxes and other found objects into mural-scaled assemblages. Her sculpture's verticality and architectural presence call to mind cathedrals, skyscrapers, and altarpieces. In Tropical Gardens, rounded biomorphic forms reference the lush plants invoked in the title, but Nevelson covered every inch of this work with flat black paint, lending it a shadowy and mysterious aura. On the right is Nevelson's The Tropical Gardens. Turning the corner, we arrive at the gallery's east wall, passing a work by Esteban Vicente on the way to our next stop, Milton Avery's Jagged Wave from 1954. A simplified, expressive landscape, Jagged Wave displays the marks of Avery's later period. With its scaled-back color palette, the composition is dominated by black and gray horizontal planes that are broken dramatically by stark white waves reaching up toward the sky. Rising like jagged icebergs, the waves appear threatening and ominous against their inscrutable black background. Looking back, you can see Avery's wave at the left, in the far background. Now we are moving along the gallery's east wall and entering the exhibition's figurative section. The large green painting at the left is Alex Katz's Ada Seated, which I'll soon discuss. On the right is Philip Pearlstein's Two Models on Studio Flora of 1962. Look down this gallery toward the far wall facing you, and notice the small work by Willem de Kooning. De Kooning's gesturally and colorfully rich paintings often depict the female body, as here in Woman with a Green and Beige Background of 1966. After emigrating from the Netherlands to the U.S. in 1926, he worked as a commercial artist before joining the mural division of the WPA in the 1930s and becoming a full-time painter. By the late 1940s, his work was garnering critical acclaim, and in the 1950s he began a series of women paintings that were less portraits than ideographs or icons of the female body. Woman with a Green and Beige Background follows this thread in its fleshy colors, its expressive mark-making, and its exaggerated, highly sexualized nude figure. Remaining in place, we have turned to face in the opposite direction, toward the gallery's north wall. Now at the right, but still on the east wall, is Alex Katz's Ada Seated, with its carpet of green grass in the background. And on the same wall in the distance, you can just make out his Ada Ada, one of the most celebrated works in the NYU art collection. Both paintings depict Katz's favorite subject, his wife Ada. After studying commercial art at Cooper Union, Katz began painting from life, creating rapid impressions of what he could see, much like the French Impressionists. In both Ada Ada of 1959 and Ada Seated of 1963, we can see Katz's simplified figurative style and penchant for flat planes of color, rendered an Ada seated as a patch of sun-soaked grass that stops just short of the top of the canvas. At the far end of the figurative section, facing us, is Will Barnett's 1965 Portrait of RRN. This work depicts Roy R. Neuberger, a financier and collector of modern art who founded the Neuberger Museum of Art at Purchase College. Throughout his career, Barnett shifted between figurative work and abstraction. This painting dates from the mid-1960s, when the artist was making paintings and prints that depict carefully and elegantly composed figures, often portraits of his friends and family members. Here he shows Neuberger seated on a throne-like chair, underscoring both his stature as a successful businessman and his importance as a patron of the arts. Rounding the corner to the left of Barnett's portrait is Adolph Gottlieb's Circular, which dates from 1960. Circular is one of Gottlieb's famous burst paintings of the late 1950s and 1960s, which are characterized by luminous sun or moon-like orbs hovering over a jagged mass of brush marks. In this work, the artist perfectly balances warm red and brown colors, textures, and shapes. During the 1920s, Gottlieb had become friends with Milton Avery and Mark Rothko through the Opportunity Gallery on 56th Street, and he was greatly inspired by Avery's use of color and simplification of forms. Throughout his life, Gottlieb worked to promote abstract painting as a member of artist groups, such as the 10 and New York Artist Painters, and as one of the Irascibles. Rounding the corner, we arrive at the other side of the gallery's main text panel, where we encounter a painting that shares Circular's rich red color palette, a 1960 painting by Yayoi Kusama. Kusama is best known today for her Infinity Room installations, her 1960s happenings, and her large objects covered with colorful polka dots. In 1958, she left her native Japan for New York City, where she played an active role in the avant-garde scene throughout the 1960s. Much of her work is steeped in the repetitious patterns, erotic themes, and explorations of infinity and obliteration seen here. Number red A is one of her infinity nets, which are composed of arced lines multiplied to form monochromatic nets. At the center is an organic heart-like shape. The repetitive patterns that dominate Kusama's works are derived from hallucinations she began experiencing as a teenager. Since 1977, she has lived by choice in Seiwa Mental Hospital in Tokyo, and she regards her art as an expression of her mental illness. To the left of the column flanking Kusama's number red A is a small cast-iron sculpture by Louise Bourgeois, and beyond it is a large painting by Kenneth Noland. One of several sculptures in the exhibition, Louise Bourgeois' labyrinthine tower of 1962 blends myth, psychology, and surrealism. Her works, both large-scale and intimate, explore themes of domesticity, family, sexuality, and the body. Labyrinthine Tower, with its leaning phallic shape, derives from her body of figurative works, depicting male and female sexual organs, which poke fun at both traditional notions of masculinity and Freudian theory. Here the artist references not only the human body, but also Greek mythology, specifically the labyrinth designed by Daedalus to trap the fearsome Minotaur. The spiraling shape of Bourgeois' tower reflects her interest in the spiral as an attempt at controlling chaos, much like the labyrinth. Kenneth Noland, renowned as a brilliant colorist, painted Spread in 1958. This work well demonstrates his interest in simple shapes, such as concentric circles, chevrons, and stripes. A leading color field painter, Noland drew upon Helen Frankenthaler's technique of staining canvases with thinned paint, which lends his paintings a luminous, translucent quality. Spread's concentric, brightly colored yellow and green circles, framing a central black orb, vibrate with the energy of a black hole, whose outer rings begin to fly apart into space. Now we are retracing our steps, back past the works by Bourgeois, Kusama, and Gottlieb, and slipping through a passageway at the right, at the end of this gallery. Here we encounter Will Barnett's Portrait of RRN and Alex Katz's Ada Ada again. We pass by the door between them, and ahead of us at the top of a staircase is Nicholas Krushenik's silkscreen print, Untitled, from the Iron Butterfly portfolio of 1968. Continuing on, we descend the stairs to the gallery's lower level. Here we are met by another work from Krushenik's Iron Butterfly portfolio, which is named for the American hard rock heavy metal band, best known for their 1968 hit In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. Displaying punchy colors and graphic forms, both Krushenik's prints are at the same time hallucinogenic and comic book-esque, combining the mind-bending quality of a psychedelic light show with pop art aesthetics. At the left is a painting by Miriam Schapiro, and on the right 2 works by Charmian von Wiegand. Both artists incorporate religious references and other symbolic imagery. Miriam Shapiro's Shrine, Dream Landscape of 1963, derives from her Shrine series, in which she examines her own identities as artist, wife, and mother. Each of her shrines is divided into 4 sections. At the top, a gold-colored panel references medieval icons and symbolizes aspiration. Below is a simple still life that alludes to art history and art making. The next quadrant depicts an egg, representing female fertility. And at the bottom is a silver-colored panel that represents a mirror, or self-reflection. Shapiro is best known for her pioneering feminist art of the 1970s, such as her creation of Woman House with Judy Chicago and her founding role in the pattern and decoration movement. But the roots of those later works are already evident in Shrine's exploration of the multifaceted nature of female identity. A journalist as well as a painter, Charmian von Wiegand was fascinated by esoteric spirituality, theosophy, mysticism, and Eastern philosophy. Early on, she emulated the work of Piet Mondrian. Later, she moved away from his strict geometry. Beginning in the late 1940s, her studies in Tibetan art and religion inspired work such as this one. Executed in 1957 and entitled Mandala, it combines figurative and abstract elements along with symbols in an attempt to represent the universe. The mandala in this work's title refers to a type of cosmic diagram, used by Tibetan Buddhists in both meditation and ritual practice. Turning the corner, we encounter Richard Kalina's Luquillo from 1970 and catch a glimpse of a mural sketch by Al Held. Kalina's Luquillo is named for a town in Puerto Rico that sits between the Atlantic Ocean and a rainforest, giving it a unique and diverse ecology. Here the artist subverts minimalism's rigid geometry by folding and shaping a striped canvas, reminiscent of a beach umbrella, into a sculpture. Working as a studio assistant to Roy Lichtenstein, Kalina absorbed some of the irreverent, vibrant, and industrial look of pop art, which is seen here in Luquillo's bright colors, shiny finish, and playful blend of painting and sculpture. Like many artists in New York cool, Al Held moved through a series of stylistic shifts during his career, beginning with highly gestural abstraction, then moving on to hard-edged geometry, and later to an interest in highly structured and illusionistic space. This mural sketch from 1964 dates from his hard-edged geometric period. He submitted it to a competition to design a mural for the brand new home of NYU's Courant Institute of Mathematical Sciences, on nearby West 4th Street. Although Held did not win the contest, his sketch was acquired for the NYU art collection. Across the gallery from Held's mural sketch is a series of prints by Frank Stella, which we will now discuss. The 1967 Black Series 1, a set of 9 lithographs by Frank Stella, reproduce his breakthrough 1959 black paintings, which present geometric patterns composed of even black stripes that fill the canvas from edge to edge. For the lithographs, Stella shrunk the image's scale in relation to the sheets of paper, positioning each one in the bottom left quadrant of its sheet. The titles repeat those of Stella's original paintings, drawing on a variety of references, from Nazi propaganda to Brooklyn tenements to New York jazz clubs, as here. Early on, Stella was influenced by the work of Jasper Johns, who rejected Abstract Expressionism's philosophical overtones and emphasis on spontaneity. You can see this here in Stella's seemingly mechanical brushstrokes, the antithesis to action painting, and his what you see is what you see approach. Hanging to the right of Stella's lithographs are 2 small collages, this Untitled one by Robert Motherwell from 1958, and one from the same period by his wife, Helen Frankenthaler, whose monumental poured painting we examined earlier on our tour. Motherwell was a prominent member of the first generation of abstract expressionists, as well as one of the youngest. The sweeping wave of black paint that dominates this small collage alludes to the artist's dramatic, large-scale black and white oil paintings. Now we have arrived at the back of the lower-level gallery. Our next few stops, seen in this corner, will focus on grid-based approaches. Dominating the gallery's rear wall is Ilya Bolotowski's 1951 painting entitled Large Architectural, which looks both back at the abstraction of the Art Deco period of the 1930s and ahead to the minimalist approach that flourished in the 1960s and 70s. During the 1930s, Bolotowski worked as a muralist for the WPA. He first discovered modern art in 1933, during a visit to A.E. Gallatin's gallery, later Museum of Living Art at NYU, which was located in the space where the Gray Art Gallery is now. On display in Gallatin's gallery were works by artists such as Piet Mondrian, whose influence on Bolotowski can be detected here in his hard-edged abstraction and his palette restricted to primary colors. Large Architectural's title alludes to the work's mural-sized scale. In the late 1950s, Agnes Martin began moving from biomorphic shapes to simplified abstractions composed of lines and grids, and she continued in this vein for more than 40 years. This small-scale drawing, Wood No. 4 from 1964, with its grid hand-drawn by Martin in ink, is just shy of 9 by 9 inches. Her spare compositions, meticulously rendered in restrained tones, require us to step in and look closely. Her faint grids and subtle textures appear to fade away when we step back. Martin intended the optical challenges and rewards involved in viewing her grids to lull us into meditative states that impart a sense of transcendence. Looking past Bolotowski, we now see our final stop on the tour, the large painting by Elaine de Kooning at the left. Elaine de Kooning made this work, entitled Bowl, in 1958, shortly after separating from her husband, Willem de Kooning, and taking a temporary teaching position at the University of New Mexico in Albuquerque. While there, she crossed the border to Ciudad Juarez and visited the bullfighting rings, which inspired her series of bull paintings. In this work, with its highly expressive brushstrokes evoking sweeping movement, she captures the energy and life-and-death drama of a bullfight. Though this work is in large part abstract, we can make out the outlines of a bull emerging from its tangle of black lines, which are punctuated by areas of vibrant color that conjure up the spectacle of the ring. As we conclude our tour, let's briefly recap the wide range of styles and art movements represented in New York Cool. We explored the brilliant colorism of Helen Frankenthaler and Kenneth Noland, gestural works by Willem and Elaine de Kooning and Norman Bluhm, striking portraits by Alex Katz and Will Barnett, and the hard-edged, grid-based abstractions of Ilya Bolotowski and Agnes Martin. Moving beyond abstract expressionism, this period saw artists exploring new styles and pushing the boundaries to arrive at both the optical heat of color-filled painting and cooler approaches rooted in deadpan realism or hard-edged geometry. Thanks for joining me. I'm Saga Beus, and you have been watching the NYU Gray Art Gallery's look back on our 2008 exhibition, New York Cool. To learn more about this show and others, visit the Gray's website at grayartgallery.nyu.edu. Sign up for our listserv at the bottom of our homepage, or follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at NYU Gray.